We are live. This is Steve Brule with Studio Brule, and I'm here with some of the Liberty Bells, who are new voices from London, England. We have Belinda Brown and Elizabeth Butler with us, and hopefully others will join us soon. These new voices... Sorry?
Hobson. Elizabeth Hobson.
Hobson? Why do I have Butler in my contacts?
It's a long story. There is a reason, but we won't go into it. But it's Hobson.
All right, Hobson, my apologies, because I've got you in my contacts with, I think I have both Butler and Hobson in my contacts, so never sure which one to use properly.
Isn't she a historical figure? I'm sorry.
What's that, Belinda?
Isn't Elizabeth Butler someone historical? Like Elizabeth, is it someone she was?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm not sure about that one either.
Elizabeth Butler, yeah. Historical. Like, Elizabeth, is it someone she was?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, in any case, we will call you Elizabeth. How's that, Elizabeth?
Perfect.
So the Liberty Bells now will be broadcasting on. What have I got going? I've got something happening here. So the Liberty Bells. Okay, here we go. So they will be broadcasting shows similar to the Flamengo File with the 5 Liberty Bells, who have 2 of which are online with us right now. And I understand you guys have started up a group called Ladies For Philip Davies. And maybe you could start explaining what that's all about. Belinda, do you want to start?
Okay, so there's a guy called Philip Davies, and he wanted to have, was it a debate on male suicide? And
it was a debate for International Men's Day. He's managed to secure one last year and the year before.
Yeah, but initially he got really laughed at, and anyway, so he ended up securing it, and then he joined on to the Women and Equalities Committee, and he's suggesting that the Women and Equalities Committee should just be called this committee, which would be a much more fair thing to do. And we're supporting him, and we've set up a Facebook page to support him and a Twitter account. And I think that's it's a really, I think it'll be a great idea. So hopefully, you know, when he raises specific issues, we'll be able to kind of give him a bit more publicity, and maybe if there are specific things that we think need drawing attention to, we can sort of alert him to them, maybe. And
you're meeting with him, interviewing him soon, right? He's a member of Parliament.
He's the Conservative Member of Parliament for Shipley, which is Yorkshire, I believe.
Okay. And he had a little run-in with another politician there, a woman named, help me with this,
Jess Phillips.
Jess Phillips, right. Now, the two of them seem to be butting heads quite often, and this is around the name of some organization or some group within the government?
Yeah, that's the Women and Equalities Committee, and he wants to take away the word woman, just the Equalities Committee.
Yeah, she's very notorious, though. When he was originally proposing a debate for International Men's Day, he started talking about male suicide and various issues that men have that would be pertinent to talk about on the occasion, and she laughed.
Right.
So she's now notorious as the woman who laughed at male suicide. But she said that every day is International Men's Day.
Online?
That video is online, yeah. We can get a link to that in the description if you like.
That would be great. Elizabeth, you wouldn't have a light you could turn on there so we could see your beautiful face, would you?
Sure.
You look very studious in your studio, Belinda. All those books surrounding you.
Yeah, this is where I like to do my work,
All your work, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about the interview. When is it? And what will you be talking to Philip Davies about?
that is on the 24th of April, and we've got half an hour. So there's going to be, there's me, Natty and Belinda, at least. Paula is also going to try and turn up. And we're trying to get Catherine on board as well. So potentially 5 of us, which would give us probably 1 question each, I should imagine. So we'll be going through the questions and editing them over the course of the next couple of weeks. But I suppose for our first interview, because I hope there'll be many more, we'll be wanting to know why he thinks it's important that the name is changed just to the Equalities Committee. What else will we be asking him? Possibly, I know he's said that he doesn't think there should be a minister for men because he doesn't think there should be a minister for women. And I'd like to ask him a bit more about that, because I think that it's very unlikely that we're ever going to not see a minister for women in government. So actually, when does he think that we might see a minister for men, and would he do it if push came to shove? I'd like to know that.
Okay. And do you have any questions in mind for him, Belinda?
I haven't thought about it yet, to be honest. I only just was talking about coming along to it with Elizabeth yesterday. I hadn't previously sort of, yeah, so no, I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, oh, no problem. And how did you get a meeting with the minister so quickly? Because I know here in Canada, it's not that easy to get a meeting with the minister. You don't just kind of say, hey, we're coming by to chat. How did that come about?
Well, interestingly, the thing about Philip Davies is he's not like the rest of them. So, we've been encouraging everybody that we know to email him just messages of support, and he gets back to everyone. And since we set up Ladies for Philip Davies, our first kind of action has been to email every single MP with a little note just saying that women are not an uniquely disadvantaged demographic, and we need to change the name to the Equalities Committee so that it's not, explicitly ruling out men's issues. And most of them just don't get back. But Philip does. And so Natty, as far as I know, just sent him an email saying, hi, we're Ladies for Philip Davies, can we come and talk to you? And he said yes. And then I said, hey, Natty, you've got to ask if we can film it. So she did, and he said yes. So
wow.
That's all just down to Philip being particularly personable.
It's courageous of him, because politicians are a little bit, tight with their public image and controlling about it.
Oh, he is nothing like that. He's also quite recently held a meeting with an organisation called Shipley Feminist Zealots. So they were set up in response. They were set up in response to a speech that Philip made at the International Conference on Men's Issues 2016, wherein he talked about women's preferential treatment in the criminal justice system. And at one point he said that feminist zealots want women to have their cake and eat it, which prompted this tidal wave of pictures of feminists stuffing their faces with cake on Twitter, and also led to the formation of this group. And funnily enough, he's actually just written an article for Heat Street where he's introduced us. It's called something like My Lonely Quest for Gender Equality is Gaining Support. And he mentions us, but he also kind of sets us up for a bit of a battle with Shipley Feminist Zealots in it. So I have tweeted them, but they are yet to respond. And we've tweeted them from the official kind of Ladies for Philip Davies account as well, and they haven't responded, which is interesting. But yeah, he set up a meeting with them and debated them and let them live stream it on Twitter. So he's not like normal politicians. Now,
we're going to be able to post the entire interview here on Studio Brûlé. Is that right?
Uh-huh. That's
Terrific.
The plan.
So viewers, we have about 27 viewers slowly marching up here right now. It's pretty good for a last minute live stream. If anybody has any specific questions for the Liberty Bells while we're talking here, I seem to be getting a decent comment stream, so I'll be able to post or pose your questions to either Belinda or Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, Belinda, what's your main topics of interest these days? What are you writing on?
Well, actually, at the moment, I'm writing on rape, and rape and transgender and women priests are my 3 running topics. And right now, it's rape. But you know, part of the reason that I write is because I really need to think quite hard, and then I write down. I'm not like so good at just talking. So if you want me to say what I'm writing about, it's actually really difficult for me to do that, because it's not until with all my pieces, I generally do quite a lot of research and think and write quite a lot before my sort of 900 words comes out. So, but anyway, it's partially in response to the basically there was a judge here who was on her last trial, and she sentenced a guy to 6 years for rape, and she just made some very, very common sense statements about if you're a woman and you get completely inebriated, you do tend to put yourself at risk. So it's kind of best to avoid that situation. Except she worded it very, very, very carefully, and she knew that everybody would come down like a ton of bricks on her. I mean, to me, it's a real shame that you can't say that sort of thing, but actually, that has already that's already been written about by another colleague of mine. So I'm going to actually focus more on other issues about rape. I know it's a very sensitive topic, so and I have written on it before, and I know that I'm quite controversial, so I probably need to be quite careful. I've actually been reading in preparation for it. I've been reading I think his name is David Buss. Do you know him? It's called The Evolution of Desire. So I'm reading that at the moment, which is a really interesting book.
Yeah, I haven't heard of him personally, but the topic of the book sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, shall I just get the book? Am I allowed to do that when I'm on air?
Yeah, sure. But while you're going, do we have a couple of questions? And I guess I'll ask them to Elizabeth here right now. If you have a description of your red pill moment and how you handle accusations of being a traitor to feminism, if you face that accusation. Elizabeth, can you talk on those?
Okay, sure. I'll go for the second one first. I faced accusations of being a traitor to feminism when I identified as a feminist, because, you know, I thought that feminism was kind of the dictionary definition, and that's kind of, I had a sort of Camille Paglia-esque kind of feminism, and when I got talking to other feminists, discovered that was very unwelcome, and got told to hand in my feminist card an awful lot. Get the odd, you know, accusation of internalized misogyny, but to be honest, I think feminists are incredibly quick to just block these days. They don't seem to want to talk at all. So I don't experience much of that anymore. As far as my red pill moment is concerned, yeah, it was just talking to feminists basically and discovering what it was really about, and at the same time as I was discovering what it was about from that sort of angle, I started to become aware of men's rights activists and anti-feminists who were actually saying what I believed and had much better information. So that was my red pill moment.
Terrific. And you, Belinda, can you talk about your red pill moment and how you handle accusations of being a traitor to womankind? Or
I've had a couple of friends get really cross with me or dump me, but then I just think, well, then they're not really proper friends if they do that. So it's not you know, it's kind of upsetting. It's always a bit of a shock if people are really rude to you, but it's not a big deal. I don't think I've actually ever been a feminist. I remember, so I studied social anthropology in the late 80s and early 90s, and it just, to be honest, I was never convinced at all. I actually had grown up living in many different countries, and I was being taught this stuff in anthropology, that women were universally subordinated, and I just knew that wasn't true. So I've never really properly bought into feminism, but I think I thought it had a bit more of a useful function than I subsequently came to think. I remember when I suppose I first found out about the whole men's rights thing. Actually, it was a little article about justice for men and boys, and I thought, wow, somebody's getting into this. And so it was, I followed Mike Buchanan, and that was where I found out about all the stuff that was happening. And I actually still find that feed, you know, his emails really useful to kind of just stay in touch with stuff. So it's difficult to talk about a red pill moment because I've never bought, I don't think I've ever sort of properly bought into feminism, and it's kind of quite a shock to me, because I think about how when I was doing anthropology, we let various issues go, like the whole idea of gender. I mean, actually, gender is a word which is trying to create the idea that sex is completely a cultural construct, and actually gender itself is a dodgy concept. And you know, and I kind of think, well, back then we didn't really challenge it, and now it's taken over to such a degree that people think that sex is completely flexible, and you've got the whole transgender movement and all that sort of thing. And I just think there are a lot of things that we didn't challenge properly then. And I think that one of the things that I've really learned over the years is, and I'm seeing this, I can't think of specific examples, but sometimes policies go through, things happen, and everybody says, if you let this little thing through, all these bad things will follow. And at the time you think, oh no, that's nonsense, you're exaggerating, you know, that needs to go through. And then years pass and you see that the people who said, no, that's really dangerous, were completely right. So yeah, so I'm, anyway, that's me. Sorry, and this is my cat.
Is your cat feminist?
Lady, I'm a cat lady. There we go. So,
somebody has a question here. What do you think motivates feminists? I think that fellow who was at the conference there wrote the book, Their Angry Screed. Now I'm trying to remember, the Herbert Purdy. It goes into quite a lot of detail on this. So if you're really, really interested deeply in that question of what motivates feminists, I think you might want to look up Herbert Purdy. The book title is Their Angry Creed. And he ties this back, he ties into the question of that most or all of the big movers, thinkers of feminism had problems with their fathers and hated men.
Well,
so,
you know, I have a problem with my father, but I'm completely not a feminist. I have a big problem with my dad, but that's not an excuse, and I don't think it's a reason. And if you think, for example, recently I saw Lena Dunham had some, it was something that she tweeted, and she had her dad doing a voiceover, and she obviously got on really well with her dad. Mm-hmm. So I just think he's wrong. I don't think it's anything. I don't agree with that. I think it's more, you know, I think it's more simple. I think that there is a bit of a tendency for women to agree more with each other. It's an evolutionary thing. We've needed to evolve female solidarity because of the whole thing of child rearing. In the past, we didn't have, you know, wonderful mechanisms of, you know, marriage and patriarchy and things to keep men in, and we were all interdependent. Women all depended on each other, and we needed to agree with each other. And I think there is a sort of female solidarity thing that still exists. It seems to me that men can disagree with each other, and not necessarily, they just disagree, and that's that, and they don't necessarily fall out. but I think there is.
But Belinda, like, do you not agree that there are a lot of feminists seem to have a big hate on for men? I mean, it manifests
Oh, yeah, they have a huge
kill all
hate for
men.
men. Yeah. No, I agree with that, but I don't think it's based. I don't think it's based on a hatred for their fathers. I think it's more a way of bonding together with other women. I think that I think it's about female bonding, and you know that saying "hell hath no place for what is it? No, sorry. There's a special place in hell for women who don't agree with other women, and I think it's much more about if you've got an outside enemy, it creates sort of solidarity among women. So I think that's part of it. I'm sure some of them will have had bad. I don't think having a bad experience with your dad, or even having a bad experience with a man, we've all had those sorts of things, and I don't think they're excuses for becoming a feminist. It's difficult. I don't think there are really any excuses for becoming a feminist. I think it's kind of to do with being a bit weak-minded and following, just following along with what everyone else thinks rather than thinking for yourself. I think that's what a lot of it is. It's just you don't want to step out of line. You don't want to be not part of the mainstream, that sort of thing.
What about Janice Fiamengo wrote on the victim mentality disorder, comparing feminism to a verifiable psychological illness, in which we're seeing today feminists bending over backwards to find ways to identify themselves as victims of something. I mean, victims of a hangnail, even.
Yeah, I do think this is actually something that I really, when I'm writing this article about, I'm working on this article about rape at the moment, and I think that there is, it's a really odd thing, because the feminist thing does really encourage people to feel like victims. And why I find that odd is that feeling like a victim is a very unhealing, unconstructive way to feel. I mean, for example, if something bad does happen to you, you feel much better if you see the part of responsibility that you played, and kind of own it in some way, than feel like a victim. So I think feeling like a victim, for some reason, I don't know why feminists are encouraging women to feel like victims. I don't get it. I haven't read Janice Fiamengo. I really need to think about it. I think it's a really, really strong, this victim mentality.
Have a look at her video. It's called Victim Mentality Disorder. I think it's one of the Fiamengo files.
I will.
It's pretty well articulated there.
No, I will do, because I'm very aware of the fact that it is part of it. I mean, it's like it's very. I mean, it's just come up in this rape case. The very fact that a woman could, it's like you would never say, if somebody left their doors and windows open and got burgled, the burglar is still wrong, but you're entitled to say, oh, I was really stupid leaving my doors and windows open. But if you go walking along the streets totally pissed, and something a bit bad happens to you, you were being a tiny bit stupid, but you're not allowed to say that or acknowledge that. Instead, you just have to pretend that you're a complete, total 100% victim. I don't know. I'll have to. I don't know what that's all about. I'll have to listen to Janice Fiamengo.
So Elizabeth, I understand you and I'm here. Where's that coming from?
I'm just going to
okay. So Elizabeth, you did a debate. You and another one of the Liberty Bells, or two more recently.
Two more, Belinda and Nutty. Can I just answer the last question though?
Oh yes, of course. Go ahead.
It's fairly simple. For me, I think that feminism's root is in gynocentrism, and that goes for male and female feminists. They, all of us naturally care more about the well-being of women, because women are the limiting factor in reproduction. I think it's as simple as that. But I've got a good quote from John Stuart Mill, which was from his book, The Subjection of Women, actually. And it was arguing against that, but I think it fits perfectly for what we're seeing with feminism now and with gynocentrism. He says, the difficulty is that which exists in all cases where there is a mass of feeling to be contended against. So long as an opinion is strongly rooted in feelings, it gains rather than loses in stability by having a preponderating weight of argument against it. For if it were accepted as a result of argument, the refutation of the argument may shake the solidity of the conviction, but when it rests solely on feeling, the worse it fares in argumentative contest, the more persuaded its adherents are that their feelings must have some deeper ground which the arguments do not reach. And while the feeling remains, it is always throwing up fresh entrenchments of arguments to repair any breach made in the old. And there are so many causes tending to make the feelings connected with this subject the most intense and most deeply rooted of all of those which gather round and protect old institutions and customs, that we need not wonder to find them as yet less undermined and loosened than any of the rest by the progress of the great modern spiritual and social transition, nor suppose that the barbarisms to which men cling longest must be less barbarisms than those which they earlier shake off.
Well, maybe we could post that up. Maybe you can include that in one of your upcoming posts. Would you write on that for a Liberty Bells episode?
I have been writing on it actually for an upcoming anti-feminist website, but I could certainly film it for the Liberty Bells. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would make a good episode.
Mm.
What was that quote? I missed it. Sorry, I was just getting a drink. What was that? I recognised it actually. What quote was it?
That's John Stuart Mill in The Subjection of Women.
Okay, yeah,
and he's
yeah.
saying that, you know, the reason that people had a problem with women getting legal and social equality was because they had these strong feelings against it. But, you know, I think that's why people are feminists, just because they have these strong feelings. And it is so true. You know, he says that the better the arguments that refute it are, the more the adherents believe it.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, in a sense, when your religion is threatened, it pushes people into a fundamentalist interpretation of religion as well. So, there's a precedent for that idea, I suppose.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And what was your next question to me, Steve? I've completely forgotten it now.
Well, I think I wanted you to mention something about the debate that you had recently at one of the Bath University.
Bath University invited us to a debate, yes, called The House Says That Feminism is Outdated. So me, Belinda and Natoya were arguing for the proposition. 3 feminists. So there was a girl called Rebecca Fairburn, who was from the Women's Equality Party. There was an old, party was Tessa Munt from Belinda.
Lib Dems.
I thought so, that's right. Yeah, she was a Lib Dem MP between like 2010 and 2015. And who else? Who was the other one? Oh, a boy from the university who's in the Gender Equality Society. Yeah. And I did check out their page because I thought gender equality, well, that doesn't sound too bad. And it was all very like inclusive and like we want to hear about, you know, everyone's struggles because of their sex or because of their orientation or this and that, blah, blah, blah. And it all sounded fine. And then you got to the bottom and it was like, as long as you believe in patriarchy theory. And I was like, oh, I see what you're about.
Oh, these things are always, they're always hiding a deeper resentment of men down there somehow. Heterosexual men not welcome. Mm. Any criticism to feminism. I have yet to come across a feminist site or person who is open to any criticism whatsoever of their belief system.
Yeah, well, we took a vote before and after, didn't we, Belinda?
Yeah,
And it was something like, I mean, it didn't change whatsoever,
something like 12
but
to
the results were like 12 people on our side, 110 against us,
Yeah.
and a couple who abstained.
Well, it
So
is a
that was
university as
unfortunate.
well. It is a university, and it's a university crowd, and the universities are just drenched and soaked in feminism in every from gate to gate.
yeah.
Yeah, we expected it to be a pro-feminist audience, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We I think we were prepared for that. Yeah. It wasn't.
Did you experience any hostility during the event, or from the other side, or from the audience?
Not really. I mean, there was one very hostile woman in the audience who you just kind of felt like, even if you could present her with the right,
We have
I don't know.
Natoya has found her way in. Natoya, how did you get into this highly private, protected, safe space here? How did you get in?
I don't know why, but for some reason, one of you or Google doesn't like my account. So I've had to log in with someone else's account, and now it's let me in.
Well, maybe
So-
you were on Google without a Gmail account.
No. I was definitely using my Gmail account.
You've
Anyway,
been blacklisted
I'm
for
here now.
nasty anti-feminist words. Google found you.
Maybe. Oh, hello,
I would consider
everyone.
that a badge of honor if that's the case.
Yes, it certainly is.
For our audience,
okay.
this is Natoya. Natoya, welcome. And you were at the debate recently as well. So if you have anything to join in, did we cut you off, Belinda? Can we come back to you shortly on your experience of hostilities there?
No, because I don't really remember hostility apart from that one woman, so I don't know. Maybe I just didn't notice it. I sometimes don't notice these things. Did you think there was hostility, Natoya or Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, Tessa Munt got particularly irate, I thought, at various points. But no, I know the one woman you were talking about. There was one woman who brought up the subject of rape. Sort of, how can you say that we don't need feminism when however many people get raped, women get raped. And she'd been just shooting us daggers for the entire debate to a degree that was quite intimidating, actually. And I actually ended up the next morning sat in a cafe eating a full English breakfast, and she came in and sat down behind me, and I was like, I've got to say something. I'm really hungover. I'll just fill my belly up a bit more before I do. And by the time I'd finished, she'd gone, which was probably a blessing, because I spoke to Belinda and she said, there's no point with some of these people, you're not going to reach them, which was entirely true. It would have just been a very embarrassing argument, probably in a cafe.
So, Natoya, we had a few questions go by here, and maybe we can swing on back to the question about your red pill moment, and how you deal with accusations that you're an obvious traitor to your gender.
So do you want me to answer the question about the red pill moment first?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay. So, my red pill moment. Okay, so I think I had more than one red pill moment. I think I've had quite a few over the years. But I think the first one for me was when I was at university and I was actually running for women's officer. And this was before I really understood what feminism was about. I thought feminism was about empowerment because I was always interested in empowerment and helping people to realize that if they take more responsibility for themselves and use more of their will to get what they want in the world, then they'll achieve more. And I genuinely thought that's what feminism was about. And naively, I started campaigning. And I didn't do a very good job of it, to be honest, but I ended up having endless discussions with kind of cheeky guys who were kind of coming up to me going, well, you know, do we really need a women's officer? You know, feminism's all bra burners and all these kind of stereotypes about feminists. And I used to say to them, yeah, you know, I see what you're saying to me, and I know you're trying to wind me up, but I actually think there's something in it. I think, you know, we could do things like have some self-defense classes, and we could do things where they have mentors, set up a mentor scheme for women. You know, I think those things are needed. And one guy said to me, well, why don't we have a men's officer? There's lots of issues that men have. You know, I'm sure there's some areas that we could help them with. And I thought, yeah, that's a great idea. So I asked him to come along with me to the annual general meeting where you would put a motion through, where you would say, okay, I would like everyone here to vote for the new position of men's officer. And this guy chickened out last minute, so I never did it. And then I saw him later, and I saw this other girl who was with him, and I said to them, why didn't you come? The guy was like, are you serious? If I'd have come and done that, that would have been like suicide. That would never have gone through, and your reputation would have completely been lost. And I thought to myself, what's he talking about? I don't really understand. And then I think it became more clear when I did, because I did the most Marxist-inspired degree in the world, which is called Media and Cultural Studies and Journalism, because I wanted to be a journalist. And then I did male gaze theory during my advertising class, and another variation of that during the film studies class. I remember having a light bulb moment when they were talking about the way women are filmed, and they're made to look like body parts, so they will only show, you know, the curve of the hips, and then the feet, and then the ankles, and then, you know, the eyes, and not the whole body, and then therefore not the full person, and all that kind of theory. And I remember thinking, well, actually, all the women I know, they like looking like that. They like looking attractive. They like people paying attention to them, male or female. So to me, that doesn't really translate into the real world. You're essentially telling me that when women want to dress up and to make themselves attractive to the eye of any beholder, that it's because men are forcing them to do it somehow, and that women have been forced to do it, and they don't know anything different. And I just basically thought that was a load of bullshit. So I think that kind of sent me on my way. But the thing is, I still kept my feminist line for at least 3 years or so, because I just didn't really have any particularly strong arguments against it. And then I went through what I would describe an existential crisis of depression, and lots of things happened in my life, and it caused me to question not just feminism, it caused me to question a lot of things that was going on. And plus, I also have always had a difficult relationship with my mother. And I always found that people made excuses for her a lot more than they did for my dad. And I found that she's used feminism on occasion in the past to make up for the excuses when she makes excuses for her behavior. And I always found that quite disgusting. So that has something to do with it as well. Oh, yeah. I contend that she is someone that if she was a man, she would have been homeless or from her community at least 10 years ago. But because she's a woman, that hasn't happened. And I truly believe that. And so the other question you were asking was about, wait a sec, I've forgotten now.
I'll paraphrase. How do you live with your obvious betrayal of womankind? And how do you deal with the accusation of your witch-like heresy?
Oh, I think I dropped...
The actual question is, how do you deal with being a traitor to feminism? that accusation?
I think when I'm in good company, I quite revel in the fact that I've dropped caring about that opinion from people for a while now. So I think I've always been someone that has never been afraid to speak out and to kind of be labelled an outsider or someone who's a bit of a contrarian, who will say the opposite opinion, but not necessarily because I don't believe it or do believe it, but I'm not afraid to take that position. So I think that I've always been that way, especially in recent times. And I've always found, even though I'm making great friends with Elizabeth and Belinda, and I think we're all very girly when we're together, and I love it, but I do find that when I hang out with groups of women in general, that the kind of honest way of communicating really grates on me from most of the time. And so therefore it's kind of no skin off my nose when I get accused of being a traitor to feminism. You know, I like having good conversations with people that can be robust in different ways. And most of the time I find that I don't get that when I hang out with most women. I'm not saying all men can do that either, but there just seems to be more of them.
There for a second, Natoya, because I've heard this comment a long time, ever since I was a teenager. And I've met women who prefer the company of men, and they use that exact reasoning that you're describing right there. Can Belinda and Elizabeth, can you comment on your experiences about that?
No, that's kind of interesting, because I really identify with that. I remember as a teenager, in the particular environment I was in the holiday times, won't go into detail, but there'd be groups of boys, teenage boys sitting around, and there'd be groups of teenage girls sitting around. And I used to just choose to go and sit with the boys, because I just found what the girls were talking about was just really boring and bitchy. It just didn't interest me, whereas the boys were always funny and silly, and I just always thought I just liked boys I just thought they were, you know, funny and silly. Well, I don't want to get myself into trouble, but I kind of really identify with what Natoya is saying. I've actually never, I remember that first meeting with you two and Catherine. It was one of the very few times I've sat with, well, it's just four of us, but I'm just not really someone who hangs out with groups of women. So, you know, that, I guess that's why I don't really have I don't have an issue with, because I don't hang out with groups of women, so I don't really get into too much trouble for my views. So anyway, I could just really identify with what Natoya was saying there.
Terrific.
Yeah, I think for me, I really relate to Natty's comment about the dishonesty. I think that, you know, it's in a large part because of the sort of feminist seep into mainstream kind of women's consciousness through magazines and TV and everything. Like a complete sort of, women always have excuses for poor behavior. So if you're talking to a woman about, you know, what I found was particularly unhealthy when talking to women was talking about interpersonal conflict in my relationship. Because if I was talking about that, they'd straight away see all the faults with what my partner had done and none of the faults with what I had done. And they see it all through the kind of power lens that feminists do. And so it's always like, oh, he's trying to oppress you, he's abusing you, you know, and you've done nothing wrong, you're saintly, and, you know, if you have done something wrong, then there are a million excuses for it. And, you know, I think that they do it in part because they believe it, and in part because it excuses their own bad behavior. It's like a whole cabal of like, let's all let each other off with everything we do, and, you know.
I'm not sure that that's feminist. I just kind of feel that women might be like that anyway. I mean,
To
I
a
really
point, I agree with you, Belinda, because I remember the same complaint from women in the 1970s when feminism was some little thing off in some corner that some angry women were on about.
Yeah.
No, sorry to interrupt you. Carry on there again, Belinda.
No, just that I kind of made a decision because I did notice that happening sort of quite early on in like in my 20s and stuff, and you'd get a lot of really negative stuff from women about particularly if you ever talked about your relationship, it was always like the man was at fault. So I really kind of really have ever since then I just try not to talk, you know, if I've tried to avoid talking about my partner to female friends because it could so easily turn into, you know, I'm in the right and they're in the wrong, and it's just something that women do, and they can be really quite destructive if you start talking to them about your relationship. I did find that when I was a lot younger, so I just and I to be honest, I don't think it's a feminist thing. I think it's
Do you think that what you're describing in the way that women communicate that you find uncomfortable, is that this is a way in which women do battle, sort of behind one another's back in the sense, in comparison to the way that men tend to do battle is, you know, face to face and sometimes physically. Is there something to that makes you uncomfortable? It's kind of
yeah. I think there is something to that. I mean, I kind of like seeing men. I mean, I've just seen that men say what they want and they disagree, and it's not an issue. It's not a problem. It's not the end of the relationship. You know, they just seem to be able to incorporate that into a relationship. Whereas with a woman, if you disagree, I don't know. It's like your friendship is at risk or something like that. So I guess that makes
the fact that, you know, that men in my experience, you know, you have a conflict with a man or you're just a competitor with a man, it tends to be, okay, here now you have it out. The decision is made, then maybe you make up, maybe you don't, but it's kind of done. And I'm wondering whether, to a degree, the way women have their battles is kind of behind the scenes, sort of working little intrigues and insinuations to work your social world against you and things like that, right? Or within the social group, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's quite possible.
Now, I think what Elizabeth may have been referring to before is that now, although this kind of this uncomfortable communication pattern has been going on probably since Adam and Eve had a fallout, I think what Elizabeth is referring to is that now there's a whole structure, sort of an epistemology of support for doing these things in feminism readily at your fingertips. That now you can point to patriarchy, you can try to this oppression of men, these bad guys here with appendages where they shouldn't be or whatnot. Was that anything of that you were referring to, Elizabeth? Sort of the feminist
absolutely
ideological support for that behavior.
Yeah.
Can I say something which I don't know what Natty and Elizabeth think about this, but I do think it's something to be cautious of, because I don't know, do you think that it's different, that there are significant differences between the UK and the US? Like, I get the feeling that in the US there's much more kind of fanatical feminism, there's much more of it than we have here, or is that just because I'm a bit in my own sort of bubble and I just don't notice it? I mean, I tend to. There might well be, because every so often I get shocked. So that's.
I tend to think that the US is always kind of 30 or 40 years ahead of us, but we're going down the same path. But you know, I think there's a lot of kind of encouraging things happening in terms of men's rights and anti-feminism here. So, you know, I mean, the first inkling I got was when we were all actually at the Battle of Ideas at the Barbican, which is like hundreds of debates that go on in this building over a weekend. And there were debates, is masculinity toxic for boys, which had a panel that was all against the proposition, which included Camille Paglia, he was on it, a guy called Chris someone who I've forgotten. Who else was on it? Oh, John Waters was on it. And I mean, that was a fantastic debate. And I remember one of the audience members got up, a guy, and he said, you know, this is the first time I've been at a debate like this and not felt attacked. So it was a real sort of celebration of masculinity in defense of it. And they had What's Wrong with Men's Rights Activism with Peter Lloyd, which was a great debate. And then a while after that, I went and I wanted to practice one of my Studio Brûlée video scripts on circumcision. And so I went to this little event called the Extremists Club, where sort of people from right across the political spectrum go to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I was introduced as an anti-feminist, and the entire room erupted in like cheers and applause. And I was like, what? I hadn't expected it at all. It was beautiful. And then we've got Philip Davies being appointed to the Women and Equalities Committee and getting his debates on International Men's Day.
And only 7% call themselves feminists. That's
Isn't it 1 in 7?
No, it's 7%.
7%. I think it was 1 in 7 mums or net mums identified as feminists.
It's 17%. Somebody wrote in the comments in the U.S. and in Canada, I think it's higher. And in reference to a point earlier, Canada is probably one of the most feminist countries on the planet right now.
Yeah. I think,
except possibly Sweden.
I don't know how to measure them out that way. You know, maybe that's too fine a line to draw. But yeah, Sweden.
I mean, you know, you elected Justin Trudeau, so there's something wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I know I was talking to a friend who lives in Sweden, and he puts on like nights with bands playing, and he was saying that without fail, every single time there's people in the audience standing counting how many female acts are on and complaining about it.
It's a bizarre time right now. Sometimes I think we're building to a fever pitch with some of this stuff. We had a woman, a member of parliament in Alberta, who called the Red Pill a movie which claims that everything would be better for men if men were allowed to rape women. That's apparently, I don't know how she got that message out of that movie, or if she just popped that little like soundbite out of the air for its shock effect. But I mean, if you've seen the Red Pill movie, only a feminist could get that message.
Oh, they're nutty people.
Now, I may be paraphrasing it a little bit wrong, but I'll try and scare up that link here. I have it here somewhere, and I'll put it in the comments. Actually, I think I can find it quite easily. Here it is, right here.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't seen the Red Pill, they must. It's available on YouTube now for like $3.49 or something.
Okay.
So go and get that up and watch it. As soon as we finish talking, do it.
This is I believe it's a Canadian politician, but I haven't had a chance to watch the whole video yet. But Paul Elam did a little thing on it. I put the link in the comments for any viewers who want to see this. But my understanding is that she goes on at some length about how the Red Pill is about men's desire to rape women. It's a serious topic, but I have to laugh because I just don't even know how they could come to that, anywhere near that kind of message from this movie. It's unreal.
Is that Professor Sullivan or something like that?
Let me see if I can find out who the professor is here. Well, I can't find it right now, but I'll look for it.
Because if it's the video, I think Karen Strawn did a video about it as well.
Oh, did she
And
talk
about
about
29 minutes into her video, she actually mentioned Ladies for Philip Davies, which was a lovely surprise.
I can't find the original link right now, but she was actually she was on
I've got
CBC
it.
News. So it's Canadian, and it's a professor at a university. In fact, there was a petition around on Facebook that I signed recently to have her kicked out of the university for this kind of pure hatred, lying views. I think it's got about 1,500 or 2,000 signatures so far. So everybody out there, sign it.
That's a good sign, isn't it? There's a lot of kickback to all this stuff.
Yeah, the kickback is just starting to grow.
Yeah, but don't you think that's kind of social justice warrior tactics, asking for her job? I agreed with the part where it said she should apologise.
Well,
asking for her job.
The question becomes
Okay.
if somebody is accusing all men basically of wanting to rape all women, why is she allowed to teach young men? Why should young men have to or be why should be available as a professor to teach these kind of professors have been fired for much less than that in the past, and I think rightly so. And I think just because social justice warriors call for people's dismissal doesn't mean that dismissal is never appropriate, because I think dismissal very often is appropriate. And with the bizarre claims and the absolute stupidity to go out and watch a movie like that and somehow come out with that message, that is grotesque incompetence, unworthy of even somebody standing on a street corner telling messages for 50 cents, in my opinion. So to be paying her $150,000 or $200,000 a year, as professors get paid, $150,000 $200,000 a year of our taxpayer money, to go to a movie and is unable to comprehend the very well presented information in that movie and come out and say the movie is about men want to rape women. She shouldn't be given money to teach. She shouldn't be allowed to teach. Maybe she should be locked up until she figured out the problems in her head. That's my mini rant for today on that one. Not okay, I said enough.
Yeah, I think we should go a little bit more hard line. I know what you're saying, Elizabeth. I know that you know, you don't want to go and be seen as a radical, like the radical feminist, but I think he makes a good argument that she doesn't really deserve to be in that position when she can't make a reasoned argument herself, and that's kind of what she is paid to do.
But again, my opinion, though, is that all feminist women's studies courses and degrees should be kicked off the campus, because none of them are academic. They are all lies. They are all propaganda. They're all ideological, and there's no place for that at any university on the planet Earth, in my opinion. If they want to start up their own private college of stupid thinking somewhere, then people want to go and learn how to think stupidly, all the power to them, but not paid by my tax dollars.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I I mean, I used to feel a bit like that about sociology, which when I studied it, you know, actually sociology could be a really good subject. You could actually get really, you know, you could collect really sound data about attitudes or whatever, and you could find out really interesting stuff. But sociology was so, and I'm sure still is, incredibly ideological. It's probably even more ideological now than
yeah, I think you're right there. It's growing ideologically, but then feminism is like it's a creeping poison. It's got onto campus and it's creeping into everything.
Yeah,
you know,
I am actually really, I do get surprised at how strong it is. You know, I do. It's just such such a taken for granted part of life in some way. But yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing inherently wrong. I think there's something important about sociology and psychology. All of these fields are valid fields of study, except they are dominated now by ideological feminism.
Yeah.
And it's the ideological feminism that has to be kicked out, because they're doing so much damage in the world. I mean, those they get in there and they create some completely bogus nonsense study, and then there are other little minions who are trained there and working out in the society, usually for the government, take these stupid lying studies and they create new legislation that adversely affects men, women, and children for generations to come. And they're very difficult to get rid of that legislation. And they use those studies as they become legitimized because those studies are coming from a university. They shouldn't be in the university. It's a really corrupt situation.
Yeah. No, can I tell another book I've been reading? Sorry, this is really, I'm just reading this. This is another book, Why Rape Culture is a Dangerous Myth, by somebody called Luke Kitsis. I think he was at one of the things at the Battle of Ideas, but this talks all about how all the laws, the extent to which our intimate, private family lives have been hugely colonized by the state. And I think this is something that feminism has really done. It's like, if you imagine, it's a sort of women's instinct. You know, previously they might have tried to control within families, and now they're in the state trying to control and micromanage our lives. And there's some really good stuff in this book. Yeah, Why Rape Culture is a Dangerous Myth.
Is that something you can do a Liberty Bells episode on, Belinda? Say your take on the book, and
you know, I could do. I'm at the moment, I'm trying to write something, but I guess I could talk about it once I've worked out all my different thoughts. I could probably write something that I could, because you know, I'm writing for, at the moment. Yeah, I could. Yes.
Okay. Terrific. Yeah. Somebody wants to know if the Liberty Bells are married.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not technically married. I live with my partner and my baby, but we plan on getting married this year.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, I'm not technically married.
Excellent.
And I have no plans to be married. But I do live with my partner of like 9 years and our 2 children, so we'll call that married.
Yeah,
that's as close as it gets to marriage these days. Yeah. I think in Canada you're legally married after something like I don't know, it's a pretty short period of time of living together. I'm not sure what the exact amounts are, the exact time is, maybe 6 months or 2 years. It's in that range somewhere.
Wow.
And Catherine and Paula, they're also married.
Okay. Yeah. So guys, if you had any ideas there, you're out of luck.
That's when the viewers all drop off.
So what's not up next for you guys? For your talks, your interests, are you debating anybody? Are you protesting something? Are you going to go out and burn a bra on Parliament Hill there or something?
Well, I don't know if I missed, because I missed the first half of this, but did you guys talk about Ladies For Philip Davies?
Yeah,
we did a bit. Yeah. The interview coming up.
Yeah, so we've got that coming up. That should
While
be
you're
good.
On that, before you go off of that, Natoya, do you have a question for Philip Davies?
Do I have a question for Philip Davies?
Yeah.
I want to know when his red pill moment was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, actually.
Oh.
That is one of my questions I wanted to clarify, but as far as I know, he was in the House of Commons and he heard someone talking about how women are at this major disadvantage in the criminal justice system, and he was like, oh my God, that's awful. Like, you know, I've got to look into this more. So he went to the Commons Library and asked them to research it for him, and when they came back, all of the evidence proved it was absolutely the contrary. And as far as I know, that is his red pill moment. But I did want to clarify that with him.
And I also want to know, because he obviously hangs out with other MPs sometimes, and they probably have off the record talks and chats and gossip. I want to know who else is in an under the radar, not a fan of the feminist monopoly of government legislation, because then I'm convinced that there's more of them in there, but they just don't want to speak out.
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah,
Tom
or they don't think it's
Persglove.
important enough for them to. Sorry, who?
Tom Persglove. I emailed him our email asking him to support Philip's proposal.
Yeah.
And he got back with a letter that was typed out to me just saying that he's not my member of parliament and so he can't talk to me, blah, blah, blah. But then underneath, he scrawled a note in his own hand which says, I will certainly speak to Philip about this. He is a good friend of mine and a colleague I hugely respect. So I'm like, oh, you secretly agree.
Yeah.
And we've also got David
That sounds like an
Nuttall.
implicit way of saying he agrees to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
It's
much
how
so.
politicians say I'm on your side.
And I actually think as well that some of the female MPs do too. I was quite happy to see. Oh gosh, what's her name? Who was on the TV recently? Larger lady, ex-MP now.
Anne Widdecombe?
Right up my head. Anne Widdecombe. Yeah, I mean, Anne Widdecombe is a little bit of a battle axe, so she probably would still agree with some of the feminist rhetoric, I suspect. But she did come out and say some very, very supportive things to do with the way that feminism has gone with the victim blaming, and also she showed her support for some of the issues that men face. And she's an ex-MP now, and she's, getting towards retirement. So, what has she got to lose? It'd be interesting to see how many of them, in her situation or not, would come out and say that if they felt they could speak freely. I just feel like there's like a cabal of people in government who are so invested in this ideology that they have like a stronghold on everyone else. And I'm not taking away everyone else's responsibility, because I think that they should be able to get their, speak to their constituents and speak out if they think that this is a problem. But I really think it's had a very repressive effect on our MPs and our government. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of the government system overall. Let's just say, point that out. But if I'm going to look at them as human beings, and they all have their own experiences, I'm not convinced that they are that supportive. And I just think that the SNP, the Scottish National Party MPs, just have really loud mouths, and they all seem to be really harpy-like as well. I'm not even being like bitchy. When you look at them, they're like Nadia and that other one. I just look at her and I think, she's the kind of woman who I wouldn't want to bump into in the supermarket, who I think would probably like bite my head off for no reason. That is the impression that they give me. They just come across as horrible people, just really nasty.
So on that note, if there is any Scottish people watching, do vote for your independence, because we won't miss the SNP.
Yeah.
Nor your feminist screens.
Yeah. Or if you want some support to get rid of the SNP, then we'll gladly throw it your way, because they're really irritating.
In Canada, it's dangerous for a politician to criticize feminism.
Yes, same here. That's what I'm saying.
So many of them, even if they have criticism of feminism, they won't voice it. They may not come out and wave a feminist flag like Prime Minister Fluffy does, but it's creeping though. It's creeping in the wrong direction. And I remember watching the news, and the Conservative candidates, and we have a leadership race right now, and they were saying defending themselves from the accusation that, or from the claim that Trudeau was the only feminist in Parliament, and feeling the pressure to come out and like also declare as a feminist or do something in that respect. Because in Canada today, feminism is powerful.
I guess we had something similar with the T-shirts. This is what a feminist looked like T-shirts. I did it.
That was such a cheap virtual signalling shot.
Yeah.
That was. Ugh.
I did my own cheap virtue signalling shot. I did a "This is what a men's rights activist sweatshirt looks like." But yeah, but I never got. I thought I might get in trouble when I went jogging, but nobody ever noticed it. Really annoying.
Steve, I wanted to add the question that we were answering. I've been thinking about an idea for a video for Liberty Bells, and so far I haven't really come up with much content apart from initiating the Ladies For Philip Davies project. But one thing that I feel quite passionately about and was interested in a previous existence was in the UK, in secondary schools, which is like high school, you have a subject called personal, social and health education. It's called PSHE. I don't know what you guys have in Canada, but it's where you get like sex education, you learn about relationships, and they also throw in this other subject called citizenship as well here. And it's all about kind of ethics and morality and the UK government system and how it works. And I've been quite concerned with some of the campaigners. I've been trying to get it as part of the national curriculum because it's always been in schools, but the content has never been part of the national curriculum. That's always been up to the school. So that's been a recent thing. And obviously, who has been trying to get hold of the kind of contract to do the content and the training for it? Obviously, people like Women's Aid, feminist organisations, they want to take hold of it and take the lead on it. And that makes me very concerned because, I mean, we already have a significant level of feminist indoctrination in our schools, and they just want to take it that step further. So I think one of the ways that we can promote alternative thinking to feminism is just to continue talking about how people can learn how to negotiate properly with each other in relationships. Because I just think at the foundation of all of this is people are forgetting how to have and how to negotiate healthy relationships with each other, whether they're men or women, friends and family, whatever, because we're all being polarized so much and we're all being told that the other person's the enemy, and it's so easy to believe it. So that's an area that I feel quite strongly about. So I probably will start working on it when I find the time in the near future, and also because it concerns our young people. You know, when you're going to school, you don't really want to be there, and then you're in PSHE maybe thinking, oh, maybe I'll learn something useful about how I can ask that boy out or something, and then feminism is going to tell you that you should do that, and that you know, you should wait for him to do it, but at the same time you're a feminist and you're an empowered woman. If he does it in the wrong way, then it's rape culture. So yeah, that's something I'm quite concerned about.
And do you have a son, Natoya?
No, I've got a daughter.
Daughter? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it affects everybody. I mean, ultimately, and people don't say this enough, I think, is that sure, early in life, friends are great, you know, and career is great and all that stuff. But as you get older and older, I think the most satisfaction comes from a happy family life in the end.
Yeah, that's really important. That's actually, that's something that I was talking about with Neil Linden about setting up a family union, but that's another of those one day things I'd really like to do. I do actually
Belinda,
think
isn't the family union's an old-fashioned idea as well, and isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I just really feel it's like actually family is it's a very subversive institution. I mean, if you want to sort of challenge authoritarian systems, you need to have a strong family. I think family is really, really important, and what feminism has done, which has really weakened society, is effectively sort of done its best to destroy the family. So I think that is actually a really important area that needs to be focused on if we want to have strong societies, is how to strengthen the family.
So that's deliberately set out with the goal of deconstructing the family, which is code for destroying the family, really. And in fact, I've had this that I've seen this many times, the depiction from feminist quarters of a family as mother and children, and often with no man, adult male, father or otherwise in the picture. And I'll speak to this in my own situation. When I was going through divorce, we went through, it wasn't a divorce, it was a separation. We were never really married, but we had to go through the whole legal thing, for expensive, long legal thing. But in any case, during the mediations, I was looking for 50% custody and all the rest of that. But what came back, and in writing and in legal documents from the mother of my son, this was many years ago, equal parenting doesn't fit my definition of the family.
Is that what your
nobody in the court batted an eye about this? So
is that what your ex-wife said?
Sorry?
Is that what your ex-wife said?
It was never my wife, but my son's mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what she said in mediation, writing, in legal documents. And she was involved in a lot of these kind of feminist groups and things like that. And so she got those ideas and probably that exact phrasing from feminist, because who talks in terms of definition of the family? Nobody but feminists. And nobody, the definition of the family, come on. I mean, yes, we have to have a definition of the family, but who comes out and says equal parenting doesn't meet my definition of the family?
It's one of the things that's really puzzled me about feminism, because if they want to have equal participation in the workplace, that's best achieved by having equal participation in the home. But they kind of seem to be against that in practice so often, which I don't really understand. But I guess it's a control thing. I guess that's.
Oh yeah, I mean, this idea of boilerplate equality has nothing to do with feminism. I don't think they ever had anything about equality ever in mind, at any time in the whole feminist venture. It's power. When you look at all of the language used by feminists in their descriptions of this and that and this and that, it's all about power.
Yeah.
All of it is about power. Yeah. Nothing about equality, really. The equality is like one of these diversionary words to kind of pretend.
Yeah, it's their marketing campaign.
Yeah.
It's true.
So, Steve, I was talking to you earlier this week about, I was talking to Belinda and Elizabeth when I went on the Day Without a Woman on the 8th of March, I went down and interviewed some of the women at the rallies with another guy, an MRA called Linton, and we just put them on Facebook Live. And the common theme at these rallies was the campaign to be paid for care work. So their idea is that women have traditionally done all the care work. They've cared for children, they've cared for the elderly, they've done all the care work in society, and that's not seen as important compared to men's work, and they think it should be paid for by the government. So they're essentially saying that they want to be paid to be housewives or to be carers of the elderly, but not actually necessarily have a employed job in that field.
But how do they respond to the fact that once married, living with a husband, she basically has equal rights to all of the family's assets? That's pay. And at the end of the day, the analysis of although men make more money, the analysis that I've read is that women own more equity in the world than men do in general. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a transfer of wealth from who makes the wealth, a net transfer, if you go across the whole population, from men to women through intimate relationships.
Yeah,
independent of the tax system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think women do about 85% of consumer spending.
Right.
So even if we earn less money, we get to spend it all anyway. The whole thing is completely crazy. And I also read a statistic, which is that if you look at earnings after tax, so because they work longer hours and for more years, men earn more than women overall because they work more. But once tax is taken off, it really evens out in terms of what we're paid per hour. I think that there's completely no inequality once tax is taken off.
Right, and every independent deep analysis of wage gaps has come up empty-handed. There's no gap.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how many times we have to analyze this and come to the same conclusion before the message gets through the real dumb ones in our world. But
I mean, there may be occasional bits of inequality, but the laws are in place to challenge it if it does happen.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, it's years in continual employment. And,
so is there anything else on the ladies' minds tonight? The Liberty Bells, folks. We've been on the air now for quite a long time. Hour and a half almost. And it's been a fascinating conversation from my point of view. And it's been great to talk to you girls. But is there anything else on your mind that you want to get off your mind right now?
Well, I suppose all that I would say is, as far as the question, what we do next is concerned, because I never answered that, is that our sort of probably most pressing job is part of the Ladies For Philip Davies campaign, which is to write up a government petition.
Yeah.
Government site where if you get, I think it's 10,000 signatures, the government will respond. If you get 100,000, they'll consider a debate, and to change the name of the Women and Equalities Committee, they would have to debate. So I think that's probably a bit ambitious for our first petition, but it would be great if we could get 10,000. We need to write a really great petition and we need to get it out there, which involves kind of getting mainstream media to report on it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll certainly spread the word around through Twitter on the networks here. I'll put it out as well. So look for that, folks. A petition to address the name change of the what is it? Women's Equality.
Women and Equalities.
It's now the Women and Equalities.
Women and Equalities, and this is a group within the government, or a
select committee. They call them.
Committee. Okay. So that you're writing up that petition, and we'll get that flying out. 100,000 signatures, and they have to listen to you.
Yeah, it's
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, they're all going to have to be British signatures, though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a little tougher from our side here. I think most of my viewership is US, although it's around the world, but it's much smaller numbers than the US.
Well, if you know,
everybody can help by sharing the petition, because everybody's got friends in the UK, surely.
Yeah, definitely.
And Belinda and Natoya, yeah. Anything else you want to? Any other message you want to leave with us?
I'm just going to continue the Ladies for Philip Davies with Elizabeth. I'm going to look into this PSHE project. And also, as I said this week, I've been thinking about the conversations I've had with some feminists recently that have been telling us that they're not really going to concentrate on male bashing in an obvious way like they have done. I mean, they've got all their legislation out there now and their policy in our government, so they don't really need to do that much more. But, you know, there's always more they could do. But it seems that they're going to be concentrating on this idea of being paid for care work, and maybe even joining the Green Party with their campaign for universal basic income. And I think that for people like us who are going to speak out against it, we have to start thinking about the next stage. And I actually think that that's where they're headed. I think they're going to just go full force into more socialism and wealth transfer in society through our tax system. And I just think the arguments that we use at the moment, I think we're going to have to start adjusting them a bit to fit that new narrative. I mean, that narrative's always been around, but I just have this feeling that it's going to get even more intense. So to everyone that's sort of watching this video who you know, has their little arguments on the internet or has conversations or you know, does a lot to sort of spread the message that feminism is dangerous to society, I think this is something that you really should be thinking about and investigating. Why they want to start lobbying the government to pay them to be carers, to essentially just do what they already do and not necessarily get a job. Yeah, so that's what the message I'm putting out there at the moment. And also follow Ladies For Philip Davies on Twitter.
Ladies For Philip
And
Davies
Facebook.
on Twitter and
Facebook.
We'll get that at name into the descriptions here as well. And Belinda, any message you want to leave with us?
No, I can't. Sorry, I can't think of anything. Sorry.
Okay.
Sure got lots.
That's absolute blast, ladies. Thank you for coming on tonight. And maybe I think there's a very positive response in the comments listening to the three of you. So would we be coming back online again soon? What do you think about that? Give us another update. Maybe we don't have to stay on for the hour and a half. We could, you know, I know you're all very busy. We can get on for at least maybe a short update, maybe on a weekly basis. What do you think?
Yeah, I can certainly try.
Okay, thanks folks for watching, and do look out for Ladies for Philip Davies on Twitter, and don't forget stay tuned to Studio Brûlé for the Liberty Bells episodes starting very soon this spring. And to everyone, good night.
Good night. Good night.